Dear Mom, you are the strongest person I know. The last few years have been so difficult for you, yet you keep pushing through like a wave pushes through the high seas. You have taught me so much in my lifetime, Mama, but the greatest lessons have been how to have strength in adversity, how to be grateful during hardships, and how to love unconditionally. And most of all, you have taught me to do everything as if it's the last thing I will ever do. Mama, you truly are an amazing woman. I strive every day to live my life by your example. Thank you, Mama, for everything that you are to me. I love you so very much. Hello, beautiful friends. Welcome back. I am really looking forward to hanging out today. We are going to be celebrating our moms with some really fun, creative projects. Mother's Day is just around the corner, so if you're looking for some Mother's Day gift ideas, hopefully these projects will inspire you. If you have stopped by to my channel for the very first time, welcome. It is so very nice to meet you. And if you're returning, welcome back, friends. It's good to see you again. I'm looking forward to spending some time together today. I have got 3 really fun projects to share with y'all today, and all 3 of these are projects that I've never tried before. They're techniques and styles that I've never ever tried before. So I'm excited, but also a little bit nervous because you know what it's like when you're trying something for the very first time. It can be a little nerve-wracking and you're always like, oh my gosh, am I going to screw this up? But I think my philosophy is if you screw it up, oh well, you learned what not to do the next time. Okay, friends, so without further ado, let's go jump right into our Mother's Day gift ideas. All right, y'all, so for this project, we are going to be using our X-Tool M1 laser cutter, and I would like to thank X-Tools for sponsoring today's episode. So we are going to be creating a really cute spiral notebook. I have been wanting to make one of these for quite some time. So the first thing I did was went into Design Space. I created this really pretty, well, I actually drew this butterfly myself, and then I pulled it into X-Tools Design Space. And so here I am just engraving the butterfly onto our wood piece. Now the X-Tool, this is so amazing, y'all. I love this tool. It's cutting out all of our circles for the spiral binding. After I cut the butterfly or engraved the butterfly, I did come back in and cut all the little inside butterfly parts, the little shapes on the wing, because we are going to have some fun with this. We are going to fill those shapes with some epoxy resin. So y'all, I've worked with the quick set resins before, but I've never worked with this kind. So this is going to be a little bit of a new experience for me. And we're going to be using some resin. We're going to dye our resin, and to dye it, I am just using some mica powders. And y'all, I will have all of the supplies for this project listed in the description box. I always put a supply list in the description box for all of our projects. So y'all be sure and check that out. Okay, so the next thing we need to do here is create some kind of a backing piece for our butterfly mold, because we don't want that resin to just run all over the place. So I am using some wax paper, and I'm folding it, I'm triple folding it or quadruple folding it. I think I folded it 4 times. And then I'm just going to go ahead and attach this to our wood piece with some Gorilla tape. Before attaching this with the Gorilla tape, I do come in and cut all of the excess wax paper away from my wood board here. So now we'll go ahead and attach it with some painter's tape, or this is Gorilla painter's tape. I think that's just the brand, but you can use any kind of painter's tape to do this. I got the wax paper taped on, I felt like it just had a little bit too much give to it. So my thinking was I probably should put some kind of a hard surface behind this. So I ran out to the shop and I grabbed a scrap piece of wood. Y'all might actually recognize that. It's from a sign we made last week. Anyway, so I grabbed the piece of wood and then my thought was, oh, I'll just clamp them together because that'll be a good strong hold. And then I was like, duh. I can't use clamps because then my project won't sit level and the epoxy will just run everywhere. So I took the clamps off and decided to just go ahead and use this Gorilla Tape to glue our front piece of the notebook to that backing board. After I got everything securely held into place with the tape, I decided I was going to set this in an aluminum pan that I just picked up at the Dollar Tree because in the event that the epoxy were to run out, I didn't want it going all over my workbench. So I went ahead and sat it in this pan. Now it is time to start mixing up our epoxy, and it's kind of like doing chemistry. It's kind of fun. You need to mix it at a 1-to-1 ratio. I did use 2 cups to do this. At the end, I was like, I really didn't need to do that because this cup it's got the measurements on it. So I poured 1 ounce of part A and 1 ounce of part B. And it was way too much, way too much. But it didn't go to waste because I went ahead and poured some of my silicone molds for an upcoming project that we have coming soon. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, pour my epoxies in, measure them out 1-to-1. So if I'm using 1 ounce of part A, you need to use 1 ounce of part B. Then I will go ahead and mix them together. And I do suggest following the directions that are on the epoxy that you are using because I think all of these are a little bit differently. So for this one, the direction said to measure them out 1-to-1 and then mix them together and then stir for 3 minutes. So I actually grabbed my phone, set the timer for 3 minutes, and that's exactly what I did. I sat and I stirred this for 3 whole minutes. Okay, y'all, so 3 minutes is not a very long time at all. But when you're stirring, 3 minutes feels like a really long time. Okay, so it's been 3 minutes. We've got this stirred together, and I'm going to go ahead and just use a little craft stick here to scrape off all the resin from my spoon because I don't want it to go to waste. And then you also have to, after it's been stirred together, you have to let it sit and rest for another 3 minutes. So I've done that, and now we can go ahead and add our colorant to the epoxy. And I am just using this really beautiful sage green. Now, this is where we get to have fun. But y'all, this was tricky, and I was so nervous as I was doing this because I didn't want to mess it up. I didn't want to spill the epoxy. I didn't want it to pour too fast. But this epoxy is really thick. It's not like our quick set one that's a little bit runnier. So it was a little easier to control my pour. So I poured a little bit into the butterfly, this first section of the butterfly wing, and then I just used a craft stick to kind of spread it out and make sure it was even. The holes, these little shapes in the butterfly wings, they got smaller and smaller as I went, and it got trickier and trickier to pour this. But I did it. I figured it out. I just made sure that I poured very slow, took my time, just don't rush through the process because you really do want to take your time here. I did get some epoxy on the edges, but I just came back in with a Q-tip and a little bit of rubbing alcohol and cleaned them off. And it it worked okay. So we're just going to go ahead and continue pouring our resin into all of our fun little butterfly wing shape thingies here. Okay, y'all, so when it came to filling the little round parts here in the butterfly wings shape, I could not pour this resin into them because I was just too terrified of making a giant mess and it just, splooshing right out of the cup. So what I did was I took a Q-tip, dipped the Q-tip into the resin, and then let the resin, epoxy resin, drip off of the Q-tip into the holes, and this worked brilliantly. It was a great way to do this. So now we have the entire mold filled in, and I'm going to let this sit and rest for 24 hours. It does take 24 hours to set up. As it is setting, some air bubbles will rise to the surface. When that happens, just shoot it with your air gun a little bit, and that settles all the air bubbles back down. It's been 24 hours. I let this sit and completely set up, and now we can go ahead and remove our backing piece, remove the tape. I will say, in all honesty, it was really hard to wait 24 hours. I kept coming in and peeking at it, and Michael was like, don't touch it, just leave it alone, let it do its thing. I was like a little kid, I couldn't help myself. So now we are going to get all of the wax paper removed, and as I was doing this, I was like, okay, we did get a little bit of leak through. It's not too bad though, it really wasn't, and some of the wax paper did stick to the resin, but it came off really well. So I'm going to go ahead. I do love how this looks. So I'm going to go ahead and take my sanding paper, and I'm using a 320 grit here. You don't want to use anything more coarse than a 320 to sand that. Okay, y'all, so I got it all sanded. It looks really good. I mean, it doesn't look perfect on the back, but it's gonna do. This is our first attempt. Now it's time to go ahead and start cutting all of my paper because I definitely want to make a notebook out of this. So I'm going to go ahead and just trace I'm using the backing piece to trace this, and then I trace the outer shape and then come back in and trace all of my holes so I know exactly where to punch these. Now, y'all, they do make spiral bound hole punches, but I didn't want to spend a bunch of money to do this. I really wanted to do this as inexpensively as I possibly could. So I'm just going to punch these holes out by hand. So what I've done here is I've stacked up 5 sheets of my paper and then stapled them together so that they don't move around as I am punching the holes. And then I just came in with my crocodile. I think that's what this thing is called, is a crocodile. And I used the very smallest hole punch and just punched all the holes out, keeping in line with my pattern. Phew, okay. That was a process because I cut 20 sheets of paper. I wanted to be able to put 20 sheets of paper in here. Well, actually I cut 25, but 25 didn't fit, so I had to reduce it by 5. So I have 20 sheets of paper in my notebook, and now it's time for us to go ahead and put the binding in. So I'm going to clip everything together with some clips or some clamps to just hold it in place so it doesn't move or shift as I am twisting the binding in. And y'all, this is just a spiral binder. I got these on Amazon. I'll have them linked for you, and it really wasn't too hard to put it in. You just kind of start it on one end, and then you just keep twisting, and just like that you have a fun notebook. I love how this turned out. This is just so much fun. One thought I did have is, before I assembled this, it would have been kind of fun to print some fun little pictures or some quotes or something on each page before I put it together, but that was an afterthought, so something to keep in mind for next time. This next project is one that I have been wanting to try for a very long time. We are going to make some homemade paper. So y'all, I have been collecting all of my paper scraps for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And all I did here was just cut them up into tiny little bits. If you have a paper shredder, that would probably be ideal, but I did not have one. So I literally just sat and cut up all of my paper scraps. This is literally weeks worth of collecting paper scraps. I did sort them all out by color. This one's got just some brown and some white paper in it, and then this one has some white paper with a lot of my colored papers, like some scrapbook papers that I had been collecting. So I separated them out into two different buckets. Once you get them cut into some little tiny pieces, all you're going to do is saturate these with water. So I am using some warm water here. I don't know if you need to use the warm water, but I did start with warm water, and you want to make sure that your entire bundle of paper is completely covered in water. And then we are just going to literally let these sit for 24 hours. This is going to help break down all the papers and soften them up so that we can make some paper pulp. Okay, y'all, so I've let my paper sit and soak in the water for 24 hours. Now, you're going to need a blender to create your paper pulp. And I have a commercial blender here. I used to own a coffee shop, and this is the blender that was in my coffee shop. So I'm going to go ahead and use this, but I'm going to designate this pitcher specifically for just crafting. So I don't recommend that you use this for food items after you've created your pulp in this. So all we're going to do is grab a big bundle of the paper from your bucket, and I filled my pitcher about halfway. And then you want to come in and fill your pitcher back up with water. And I'm just using some of the water from my bucket, but you do want to make sure that your paper is completely covered inside the pitcher. And then we will go ahead and pop the lid on, put it in the blender, and start blending it until we create a fun paper pulp. I did blend mine for about 25 seconds, and if you feel like it's not blending very well, it might just be because it needs a little more water, so just add some more water to it. Okay, so after about 25 to 30 seconds of blending, you should have some pulp that looks very similar to oatmeal. That's just kind of what this reminded me of. I kind of liked playing in it, I'm not gonna lie. So it should be about the consistency of oatmeal. All right, now we're going to go ahead and take this screen. Y'all, this is a grease splatter screen. This is what I'm using to do this. This is my first time playing around with paper making, and I didn't want to spend a bunch of money on supplies, so I am literally just using things that I had on hand in the house. We are going to experiment a little bit with paper making again in the future using some different supplies, but for now, we're using a grease splatter screen to do this. So I pour some paper pulp on top my screen, and then using my hand, I come in and just start squeezing all of the water out. So I do have a bowl underneath my screen, and I am squeezing as much of the water out as I possibly can. And then I take my hand and just start shaping this into the best square or rectangular shape that I can possibly get. After you start squeezing the water out, it does spread a little bit, and you have to just kind of keep playing and keep reshaping. But once I've done that, and I feel like I've got most of the water out, most of the water that I could get out with my hand, I come back in with a sponge. This is important. You really want to do this step and continue squeezing as much water out as you possibly can. This is an important step. If you don't do this step, your paper will take weeks to dry. Once I get as much water squeezed out as I possibly can, I sort of just flop it over onto a linen cloth. You can use linen or you can use bath towels, just anything that's going to be super absorbent. I tap it off, and so that I can lay it onto my cloth, and just like this, we have a piece of paper. Now, when this paper is super wet, as this one is, it doesn't handle very well. So I recommend not handling it after you tap it off onto your cloth. I just can't help myself sometimes, and I was just playing. All right, so we're going to go ahead and continue this exact same process. We're going to pour some pulp onto our screen, squish as much of the water out as we can with our hand, and then shape this into the best paper shape that we can, and then take the sponge to it. Repeat the same process, just kind of rinse and repeat here. The more I did this, the more creative I got with ways to shape my paper out, because I was feeling like my paper was just looking more like tortillas than it was a sheet of paper. So I poured some pulp on the screen, and then I went in the kitchen and grabbed my little kitchen scraper and started using that to shape the paper. I will say this worked beautifully, but it did make my paper a little bit thicker. So I did get some very thick pieces of paper here, but I was actually okay with that because my plan for this paper is to use it for some watercolor sketching or some watercolor painting. I'm really excited to do some watercoloring on this. So my sponges got a little bit saturated, so then I just resorted to using towels to soak up the water, and I went through pretty much every towel in my house. So again, I just soak up a bunch of the water after we've shaped the paper, drop it onto the linen to let it dry. Y'all, I was having a ton of fun. I got a little bit crazy with this, and I used every single bit of the paper that we had in that bucket to create paper pulp and came up with all these sheets of paper. Now, the more I did this, the better I got at shaping them, and the more they did start to actually look like sheets of homemade paper. Okay, y'all, so after you get all of your paper made, you do want to lay it out on a towel or some linens to let it dry. I do think it's best to air dry your paper. So I set all of mine out. I air dried everything. It did take about 3 days to completely dry my paper. But that was okay. I didn't mind the process. I loved it. It kind of made me excited. It was fun to just check on it every day and watch the process happen. So now we have all of my paper completely dried. Some of them did split, some of them did tear a little bit, but I was okay with that because I thought it just added a lot of that homemade character and homemade touch to the paper. So here I'm just kind of going through all of my paper. I decided to sort of sort them out. Like you can see this one kind of tore a little bit, but I still kept it. It's usable. We can make a tag or something out of it. So here I'm just sort of sorting them out into their shapes and the different sizes that they are. I have a pretty good stack. I might have been having a little bit of fun creating the paper, so I ended up using every single bit of paper pulp that I had on hand, every spare shred that I had. So now I want to go ahead and flatten my paper a little bit because as it dries, the paper will curl a little. So all I'm doing is just using my heat press to flatten the paper. So I sat it on the heat press pad, covered it with some parchment paper, put the heat press on top of it for 30 seconds on one side, and then I flipped it over and did 30 seconds on the other side. And at the end, after all this was done, I really love how my paper turned out, and I can't wait to do some drawings and some art pictures on this for my mom. Okay, y'all, so all of our paper has been pressed, and wow, did it reduce this stack. I don't know if you remember what it looked like before we pressed it, but now it is really reduced. And so now, again, I've got to go back and resort it all because it reduced the paper quite a bit to press it. So I just want to put it in stacks according to their sizes. So I kind of did a large, a medium, and a small, stacked them all together. And until I'm ready to use these to start drawing on them or painting on them, I'm really excited to try some watercolor on this because I can't wait to see how these are going to do with some watercolor painting and how it's going to hold the watercolor. But until I do that, I thought it would be really cute to just put a ribbon around this and tie it up and make it look decorative in the studio until I am ready to use them. I love how this paper turned out. It was a really fun process for me, and I can't wait to try this again. This next project is the one I am the most excited about because I am creating this specifically for my mom. And Michael, he helped me a lot with this. I had the design in my mind, and then Michael, he is so good at taking my ideas and putting them in his design space. He's really good at all the engineering, and he knows how to do the math, and he just knows how to do all of it. So he put it into his little creative space, created the template, and then we took this to our X tool and had our X tool cut the whole thing out. Y'all, if you don't have a laser cutter and it's something that you would like to add to your arsenal, I highly recommend getting this one. We have the X-Tool M1 cutting machine. I do love it. We use it all the time. And X-Tool has been kind enough to give me a discount code for all of y'all. So if you're interested in one, I will have the link to X-Tool's website and a discount code for y'all in the description box. Okay, so we've designed this whole little book. We wanted to cut this out of one sheet of wood so that it would bend. So Michael did all the engineering. He created all of the pieces and the parts, and then we brought them into X Tools design space, did all the fun stuff there, and then sent it to the cutter and let the laser cutter do all the work. This is so cool. I love this process, y'all. I can't say it enough how much fun we are having with our laser cutter. Sometimes it is so hard for me to remember when Michael and I would come up with intricate designs like this and then literally take them to our scroll saw and cut them by hand. And because we were cutting them by hand, not everything would always work out. It's amazing having a laser cutter that cuts everything precisely. Okay, so here are all of our parts. We've got the whole book cut out, and now Michael's going to just come in and go ahead and assemble it. And we are using super glue to do this. This super glue that Michael uses, it's a two-part. It's got the super glue, and then it's got the quick spray, a spray that you spray on it so that it quickly dries. I will have the whole kit linked in the description box for y'all under our supply list. So Michael is just going to come in. He's going to continue gluing all the parts together so that we can create this fun little template that we've created here into a keepsake box. But it's a keepsake box that's going to look like a book, and I'm really excited about this. Yeah, it's pretty amazing to me that we were able to create this with our laser cutter and make wood bend. So if y'all remember, this book was cut from one big long sheet of plywood, and then Michael engineered it so that it could bend in the middle and create our book. And I love this. This is so fun. I just feel a little bit giddy at how this turned out, and the results are just amazing. It's everything I wanted it to be. So the next step is for us to go ahead and start staining this. I want to stain the book to sort of make it look a little bit old, to make it look like a vintage book. So I'm coming in with my Waverly antiquing wax, and I first do a full coat of this antiquing wax over the entire book. I do it in small sections though, because as I put a full coat on, I come back in with a clean, dry cloth and wipe away all the excess stain. And it's very similar to actually just staining a book. And so when you wipe away the excess, it reveals all of that beautiful wood grain. So I repeat this entire process over the entire keepsake book box. Our entire book box, keepsake box, is now stained. But as I was looking at it, I was like, oh, we sort of lost some of the paper feel that Michael worked so hard to create on all of our edges. He scribed these in to make them look like individual pieces of paper, and after I stained it, we sort of lost that look. So I thought, let's come back in with a lighter color. So I am using some folk art paint in the color parchment here, and I am dry brushing this all over our edges to enhance those individual pieces of paper and make that pop. So again, I just dry brushed this on. I did do a couple of coats to make sure that I was really getting that paper grain to pop, and it did look, in the end, it looks fantastic. I love how it turned out. Now I want to add just a little bit more aging to our book. So I'm coming in with some black chalk paint. This is Waverly black chalk paint, and I'm dry brushing this on again, and I'm just going to go ahead and dry brush this onto the edges and kind of do a sweeping motion from the edge inward to just give this a little bit of depth, dimension, and it also adds a little bit of antiquing and aging to our book. I love how adding just a little splash of black to this book really gave it an aged look. It kind of enhanced it. It gave it lots of depth, lots of dimension, and made it pop. I do love that we came back in and lightened up our faux book pages. That really made a big difference as well. All right, so I want to go ahead and paint our little cute locket that Michael worked so hard to cut out. Well, the laser cutter worked so hard to cut this out, but Michael designed it. And I am just using some antique gold rub and buff to paint our little locket. This little locket actually does work though. It slides right into the little latch there on our book, and it keeps the front cover of the book from falling open. I love how this looks, y'all. This is so cool. I cannot wait to fill this up with some fun keepsakes for my mom. Okay, y'all, so after I got this book stained, I thought, oh, I think we need a title on the cover of our book to make it look more authentically bookish. So I took it back out to the laser cutter and engraved a fun title on the cover, and I do think this made a big difference. It kind of brought the whole thing together, completed it, gave it that finished look. The title was a little bit off center, and I don't know if it was user error or if the camera on our laser cutter has just somehow got a little offset, but it's okay. I decided no big deal. I'm going to go with it. It still looks like a good book. It's fun. All right. So for some fun embellishments to tuck inside of our book, I came in and created these fun quotes. These are all quotes that have to do with moms. There's one for each month. And then I drew some flowers and just kind of did some pencil sketching on them, colored them in with some colored pencils to just create some fun little artistic art pieces to our quotes. I will have these available for all of y'all as a free printable. The link will be in the description box. I wanted to go ahead and cut these to make them look kind of like our homemade paper did. You know how our homemade paper has kind of those rough, ruffled edges on them? So the best way that I could come up with to recreate that edge was to take my ruler, place it on the edge, and then just tear it. And it did give us a lot of fun edges on these. So I did this entire process for all 12 of our fun little monthly mom quotes. My plan for this is to write my own personalized message on the backs of each one of these. I'm going to just do like a memory that has to do with each of the quotes. I just think this is a very special way to personalize this gift for your mom. I do want to take this to the next level, so I came back in with my antiquing ink here. This is like that vintage photo ink that you can get, and I just dipped it onto my little ink sponge pad. I will also have these linked for y'all in the description box. And then I just came across all of the edges, gave them a little bit of inking, and then did just a very light coat across the whole front to give these a little more of a vintage look. I love this project. I just think it is so sweet, it's so special, and it is so personalized. So y'all, if you do not have a laser cutter, I will tell you, Hobby Lobby has a lot of these really fun keepsake book type things that open up very similar to this. So you could just go buy the book and then print these cards and write special little notes on the backs of all of the cards for your mom. And it's just so sweet. What a beautiful, special, personalized gift to give to your mom. Alrighty, y'all. Well, I guess that is going to wrap up our projects for today. Gosh, I had so much fun with these projects, and I do feel so proud of myself for trying new things. I love to challenge myself to try new techniques, new ideas, and so this was a lot of fun for me. I feel proud of the end results. I don't know if I can pick a favorite though, y'all. I love all three of our projects from today. You'll have to let me know if you have a favorite of the three. I love the spiral notebook. I do feel particularly proud of that one, just because there was so many new techniques involved with that one. Working with the resin was a lot of fun. It was a little tricky and it didn't turn out perfect, but I still love the results. The homemade paper, that was just a bunch of fun for me, and I cannot wait to actually explore a little bit more with some paper making. I think there might be another one of those episodes coming in the future where we try some different paper making techniques. And of course, I really love how the book turned out. I think it's just special. I think my mom is really going to love that. So I don't know. Do y'all love to give handmade gifts? I love to give them. I love to receive them. I think there's just something so special about something that was made with your own two hands. So I hope that these projects today inspired y'all, gave y'all some good ideas for your Mother's Day gifts. Alrighty, friends. Well, that wraps it up for today. Thank you all so much for being here with me. I always love our time together. I look forward to next week. I've got some really fun projects planned for next week as well. So y'all come back and see me again next week. Until then, take care, and I will see you soon. Bye, friends.